Hey everyone, welcome to the Cannabis Technologist. I'm your host Rob Neely, and with me today is Greg Gamet.
Currently Chief Cannabis Officer at Gold Flora Farms.
How you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing fine. How is sunny California?
It's great. We're just getting over the June glooms down here in Southern California, so it's been, cloudy and rainy in June and end of May. But we weekend and looking for more.
Well, okay, great. Well, I'll give our viewers a quick bio. Greg has co-founded and managed a variety of cannabis-based businesses, including a cultivation facility and recreational dispensaries, a packaging company, a consulting company, a cannabis-focused real estate, as well as a software development group focused on helping marijuana businesses stay compliant. It's such a wealth of experience. I'm pretty excited. He's won the Cannabis Entrepreneur of the Year. So Greg, I just want to start kind of on a layman's level. I'm starting my own grow business, or I'm going to start a dispensary. What's the first thing you're going to tell me starting a cannabis business?
The first thing I would ask you is how much experience do you have with cannabis and marijuana and that type of thing. So from that point forward, we would then, if you don't have a lot of experience and you haven't done it yourself, we would probably tell you to hire a good consultant. And there's a lot of good ones out there, but there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there right now as well in the industry because, any new industry gets the good and the bad with it, the mad rush to the pile of gold coins everybody thinks we have in this industry. So I always try to find out what people know and then try to fill in their gaps on what we can provide as a service, or when I had my consulting company, different consulting group, what we could provide as a service, how we could best service you. The other thing is I always tell people to write your business plan in pencil, because every day it's like Groundhog's Day when you wake up. You wake up and you're reliving change or something different, or you have investor issues, everything's costing a little bit more money and taking longer than you expected, that type of thing. So I always tell people, long-term investment, write your business plan in pencil, and hire somebody who has the know.
That's great. So basically, the certainty is that there is uncertainty. And in other words, you have just to prepare yourself for the unexpected.
Yes, absolutely. The certain thing is that tomorrow will be a different day with a different set of rules and regulations that are ever changing.
Yeah.
And like with me, I'm operating in a few different states. A lot of the rules and regs mirror each other, but a lot of them are a lot different.
Absolutely. Greg, what attracted you to this space in the first place?
Well, I've always been a lover of cannabis. Not when I was a child or anything like this, but when I was in my mid-20s, going to college, in the music scene, playing drums here and there, and I found that it put me in a good space as far as mentally. It settled me down a little bit. I may be a little bit ADD, I don't know, but it always helped me have a clear path, I guess. So I've been interested in it for a long time. I have arthritis from a young age, so it's always kind of helped me with that. So I was self-medicating with it before legalization happened. So when it happened, it was a pretty natural transition for me.
Okay. Interesting. With Dank, starting in 2009, I think that was your first venture. You were one of the first medical and recreational cannabis dispensaries in Denver. Being one of the first, what did you have to learn?
Well, so the cannabis space back in 2009 is way different than it is today. So
sure.
In Colorado, the barrier of entry was relatively easy on a monetary scale, but it was difficult on a social scale. Less people really thought it was a viable business or the future. So it was hard that way. But, you could go in, rent a space. There wasn't a lot of rules and regs. Wasn't a lot of, there wasn't a lottery in Colorado. It was kind of like first people to risk it and gamble it. You go down to the city, pay $1,800, get in queue for a license. So on the monetary side, the barrier of entry was easy. So at the time, I was running a large landscape land development company, concrete company. So I tried to keep the two lives as separate as I can because I didn't want backlash. Because really, all of a sudden you're a weed guy and you might not get to bid a job or work on a house. We were doing, stuff for churches and all kinds of stuff back then. So, building playgrounds and all that kind of stuff for the city of Denver, building big parks. So really try to keep it separate. But 2009, it was more of a caregiver model. It was full medical. Recreational was, pie in the sky stuff down the road. But I had a passion for it, and really I was doing my caregiver model in my basement with one light. My wife got pregnant and said, my parents are going to want to come visit, and I don't want them to see, a weed garden in the basement. It was all legal to do it that way on the caregiver model. So me and my business partner, Justin Jones, went out and found a small 1,200 square foot commercial space. We're just going to throw two lights in, and two lights became four became six, and so on. So barrier of entry was a lot easier back then.
Okay. Now, the packaging company you run is called Kush. Did Kush just come as a natural extension of the dispensary business? How did that come about?
Well, I'd love to take credit for the whole idea, Kush, but that actually started out here in California, Southern California, right here up the road in Santa Ana. Nick Kovacevic, Dallas Bimbo were high school buddies. They started Kush Bottles in California. So if you fast forward a little bit to 2014 when recreational hit, that's when really medical rules and regulations in Colorado and recreation rules and regulations were hitting, and they required child-resistant packaging, certified child-resistant ASTM packaging. So I was calling Berry Plastic. They didn't want to sell to marijuana company. I called Rexam. They didn't want to share. These are all the traditional pill bottles you get at several different pharmacies across the country. So I finally got a hold of Kush Bottles in California and said, I'd like to order a couple pallets of these bottles. And we had a little empty space next to our dispensary, so I got a couple pallets. We started packaging and doing the labeling ourselves right there. And then I had a bunch of buddies of mine that own dispensaries in Denver, like, hey, where are you getting your bottles? And I said, I'll just order an extra pallet for you. So I ordered an extra pallet, and they'd come grab a couple boxes and just, pay us like that. Then the space next to our dispensary, 10,000 square foot warehouse, opened up. We decided just to swallow that up. Didn't really have a business for it, and I invited Nick and the crew from Kush to come out and meet with me and say, hey, why don't I start a distributorship? So I started Kush Bottles Colorado. We quickly started doing more business in Colorado than California, and one thing led to another. They purchased me a couple years later, and we went public, and it was a pretty good venture on that end.
Okay. I'm curious, given that the floodgates are opening in California, do you expect business to go back that direction?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's going to be, once everybody really starts following the rules and regs, they kind of keep putting that date out there. First it was, January 1st, 2018. Now it's, okay, we're going to really start enforcing the rules July 1st, 2018. So for guys like me who operate in a compliant industry and it kind of levels the playing field, I call it the warehouse or garage guy that's, producing, a few pounds here and there and going into, the dispensary and selling it out of a backpack. Those days are numbered, if not gone already. So part of me feels for those people, kind of because that's where I come from a little bit. But at the other end, to have really good, clean, tested, product for the public to consume, it's really a requirement to do so, because you can't just you can't keep going on that old model and have it be a viable business that can be regulated properly. So, and the states and the governments and the local jurisdictions are all interested in this tax revenue. So that's really the reason why legalization is getting pushed to where it's at, because, money. Unfortunately, that's kind of the way the world goes around. So there's going to be some corporate entities, but I think there's always going to be that place for that craft grower, craft producer guy as well, or lady.
Okay. Interesting. And given your wealth of experience across a number of segments in cannabis, it would only make sense to me that you were part of a consulting group. And that's when did you start Denver Consulting Group?
Well, so once we moved into that warehouse of Kush bottles, people would call up and say, well, why do I need this package, or why do I need to label it this way? So we actually said, okay, we're going to have a class in here. We're going to have a labeling class to show people what they have to put on their label, why they have to use this packaging. So it was really first a play to get people to use Kush bottles and to further our business, offer another service. Then we started getting calls from out of state. Can you help me with the application in Illinois? Actually, it was Midwest Compassionate Care was our first. We started Dank Consulting Group, actually, and then our first client said, can we not put Dank on our application? And I said, well, we have DCG, so we'll be Denver Consulting Group, right? So we quickly, a week later, changed to Denver Consulting Group, picked up our first client, Midwest Compassionate Care, helped them write their application for Illinois. We scored, I think it was the second highest in the state, might have been the first highest in the state. And they won a license. I just got news yesterday. They won 5 more licenses in Ohio. So it's kind of neat to see these first customers of ours expand their wings there in Florida. They've got a whole bunch of stuff going on in Arkansas as well. So that was our first client, and that really put us on the map because, then we could go to people and say, well, we helped them write an application in a lottery system, which that barrier of entry is very high in those lottery states. And that kind of snowballed into classes. We had a classroom set up where we had 20, 30 people come in. We'd teach them how to do metrics. So, everything kind of was born from Dank. We saw a need at Dank, and then we would just kind of start a business, like metrics, the metrics tracking system chosen in most states. We were their beta tester in Colorado, so we got to help them, get the software. And then the same way happened with the POS systems like Greenbits and some of these, MMJ Menu and all those guys from back in the day. We were, beta testing stuff for them, doing the automatic CSV file uploads instead of having to input that overnight and that kind of stuff. So, I can remember the day when we were handwriting every receipt before our POS system. And then why do we need a POS system? Well, you need to be able to prove that you're compliant. So, everything started to get a little bit more techy, a little bit more, towards the tech side of things to help ease your job or to make it easier to regulate.
Sure, which is a great segue to my next question regarding CannAscore. I know it's a software development company created to program and provide compliance assessment with state regulations. How did that come about?
Well, I think it was a little bit before its time when we started. So honestly, we felt that we had a lot of customers that we would go out and we actually, I want to give a shout out to Mark at iComply. We actually had our employees going through his course early on. It was just a compliance training course for Colorado. Wasn't required, but we really, I have a fear of going to jail. So that fear of going to jail really made me invest in being a compliant company. So I used to always tell my employees, once we're a compliant company, we can sell a little bit of marijuana. So really, we're in the business of compliance, and after that, we get to sell some marijuana products. But so we took that course, and we saw, this is really helpful to us. But how can we streamline this, and how, and we'd hire iComply to come in and do these audits that would take them, a day and a half, 2 days usually to walk through. Then it'd take a few weeks to get the score back. And I was like, well, there has to be. I'm not a programmer. I can't go and do any kind of programming. I just had an idea. We partnered up with a friend of mine back in Iowa, hired a professor from the University of Iowa to write the algorithm behind it. And what happened was we just, we can go into a dispensary and completely do an audit electronically, and it will spit out a score on site. And it kind of just weighs different infractions with different weights and computes it and spits out a score much like a FICA score, but it's really the compliance score. And banking, everybody's, P&Ls look pretty glossy if you're running your business right in cannabis, but really the real risk for banks to bank you or loan you money or landlords to rent to you is how compliant can you be. And so CannabisScore is born. But like I said, before its time, nobody was really getting enforcement at the time, so nobody really wanted to pay the extra money for CannabisScore. So it's kind of been on the shelf a little bit and coming back to life as of recently. And there's a few other companies out there providing the same service who I think are great companies as well.
Okay, interesting. I would think the opportunity for that would fly as this whole industry explodes over the next 5 years. There's going to be a huge demand for that. One would think, at least.
Yeah, you would think it would have happened a few years ago, but not. The mentality has to change first. And usually you'll see, like a state like California, this is where medical marijuana and quote unquote legal marijuana began. But there was many, many years of no rules and regs, really hardcore. They kind of had some, out of bounds, had some out of bounds lines, and then it'd be like having a football game with no offense or defense, just run with the football and tackle and pick it up and run with the football, So kind of like rugby, I guess. So now that these people are not used to the rules and regs, they're really trying to change quickly. It's a tough culture to learn overnight. It's a lot easier to start being compliant from day one than trying to teach it later on. So, new people are getting into the industry, new money. The guy wants to put $1 million in a business. That'd be nice to know if they're, a monthly compliance score, emailed to him would make him feel better, I'd think.
Absolutely. Makes total sense. So you recently joined, Greg, as the Chief Cannabis Officer at Gold Flora Farms, which from my research says basically it's focused on vaping products and consumables. How did that come about?
Well, one of my clients, Lori Holcomb, I actually grew up near her, near Sioux City, Iowa, and her brother and I were friends, and he called me and said, "Hey, I heard you're in the cannabis space. My sister was wondering if you do consulting." I was holding my new baby boy, and I was like, "Well, I'm a little busy right here, but tell her to Google me and give me a call tomorrow." Well, about 25 minutes later, Lori calls, "Hey, Greg, Lori, how you doing? We got this property in Desert Hot Springs, 20, give or take a little bit, 28 acres. We want to develop. It's in the marijuana overlot." And Lori's background is land entitlement, real estate, that kind of thing. So whenever a use change happens and it comes across their desk, they always look at it. Why is the city changing use? How can we, buy land around it or within it to make a profit? And I jumped on a plane the next morning to sunny California, landed, and walked into a room full of investors, and that's where Gold Flora was really born. And really Gold Flora is going to be, it's a fully integrated. We'll have dispensaries. We already have one in Long Beach. It's under construction right now. We want a license there, and we got a couple of LOIs out on a few others. And the facility will be 620,000 square feet of building space, which will be operating in part, and we're going to lease part of it out to companies who have operated within a compliant space before, or really the cream of the crop will be on that marijuana campus.
Well, that's pretty impressive and a pretty big facility. I'm also curious, Greg, I've read recently about SB 930. It's been passed in the Senate in California, and it's going into Assembly, but it's basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, this feels like a big deal. It would allow licensing of certain banks and credit unions to bank with cannabis businesses legally, which is as far as cash flow goes, is a big deal. What is your take on that? What are your expectations? And how does given such a massive facility you were just telling us about for Gold Flora, how do you guys manage cash flow?
Well, there's a lot less cash in the industry in the compliant space than what people think. If you're a compliant company and you're doing things right, you can have a bank account. We have a bank account in Colorado I operate out of. Had it for years, and fully above board bank. So it's the once you get licensing, banking becomes easier. There's the union out here is big. in the California marijuana space. Union pushed the bill, they got behind it. So if you're a union company, you can bank at the union credit union. So there's definitely a lot more banks opening up to it nowadays. Back in the day, I can't remember what year. Back in the day, I don't remember what year it was, but it was probably somewhere, the year after legalization, maybe early 2015. They came out, the federal government and Obama administration was encouraging banking, but at the same time they were discouraging money laundering. And if you look at the definition of money laundering, it's selling of illicit substances, Schedule I narcotics, and running it through a bank account, making it legit. So at the same time they're saying banks to bank, it threw a red flag up to banks saying, oh, well, we don't want to be caught in the money laundering scheme. So there's a lot of people that will open up a bank account for a while under an assumed name, but that's not legal. So a lot of companies still operate cash. I know guys that it's all cash and they pay their employees in cash, and it's going to be it's really cumbersome. It really costs a lot. It's dangerous. Having that much cash on hand, it gets the people that are looking for cash to hang around and possibly rob you. So the faster banking gets really 100% above board, the better. But if you're a legitimate cannabis business with a license, if you look hard enough, you'll find a bank account. Well, the funny thing is, people that always complain when they can't find a bank account, I'm like, well, do you have a license? They'll say, well, not yet. We're in the process. I'm like, well, you got to get a license first. You got to have that piece of paper to hang on the wall to legitimize everything. Early on in the days, we'd have to go down and pay taxes in Colorado, and we paid taxes at the same place you would pay $10 to renew your license. So I'd walk in there with a backpack full of cash, wait in the same line, and then pass $50,000, sometimes $100,000 in cash through the teller window, one stack at a time. Who knows who's watching me back there, right? So then, a couple months later, we made a point to have everybody show up at the same time and just overwhelm their cash counting abilities. So they finally changed it a little bit, and we'd go into a special conference room and wait in there and be escorted in by security guards. But you can imagine, the government wants their tax money, so they're going to start leaning on banks to be able to make it easier. There's other ways to bank right now, too. You can get a Federal Reserve account and make deposits straight in. The federal government's taking our tax money, so they're taking marijuana money, right? So why can't we take it to a bank?
Absolutely. It's a great point. Not to mention you're a target for theft, which is crazy. And I'm curious, Greg, you're kind of in a unique position to reflect on this next question because you've run the gamut on so many different parts of the industry. But what is the biggest ongoing challenge that you see in cannabis? What is the one common theme that frustrates you?
It would be the snake oil guys, the guys that are selling services and stuff in the industry, looking to make a buck rather than making an impression and a change. So I look for people who want long-term relationships, not just, oh, here, buy this, I'm gone. You can't see my taillights, I'm gone. So the other thing is, I'm not as upset about this, but the industry as a whole, they're kind of worried about, big tobacco or big alcohol coming in and kind of pushing all the little guys out. But you see what's happening with the beer companies. There's always going to be those craft beer companies that do well. And, when Prohibition ended on alcohol, the big names got into it and made, the Bushes and Budweiser, all those families, made a run for it, but you can see that people like craft in this country. So craft growers and that. So there's going to be a pushback on that. But banking, getting rules and regs, change so maybe all the states kind of mirror each other. Let's look at Colorado. It's a working system. So why try to reinvent the wheel? The tax, and being overtaxed. That's probably my biggest concern because all that money hits the all that money hits the I can't remember, somebody popped in my office and screwed my train of thought up, but
It's okay. We can edit that out.
Going to hit all that tax money is going to be hitting the end customer. So if there's an excise tax of 15%, then that's going to make the price of the marijuana go up 15%. So just overtaxation could ruin the momentum we have going.
Okay. Greg, you're an investor. Where would you tell people to invest in cannabis, or more specifically, what segment do you see the biggest growth opportunities?
So cannabis, there's a lot of picks and shovels companies. They're really hard to decipher from, and a lot of companies going public. So people always ask me, what cannabis stock would you buy? Well, I always start with, don't buy somebody who did a reverse merger or a shell company, because that's not true financials. So I'm looking for profitability before I put my money somewhere, and a strong leadership team on that side, not just whatever stock's hot and jumping up and down, because really that's it. And I always tell people when they're investing money in cannabis, it's not a short-term play. It's not a get-rich scheme. It is a long-term investment. So everything's expensive coming up. I mean, to start a grow in California on a 3A license, it's $5 million, with TIs and everything you need, give or take $1 million, So we're talking millions now. Back in Colorado, I started bank with like $3,500. So if you're investing money, know the team you're investing in, make sure they've operated compliantly in other industries, and really have a track record of performing not only in the marijuana businesses, but in other businesses as well.
Greg, I really appreciate it. This has been an education for me. I learned a bit here, some things I didn't know, particularly in banking. So I greatly appreciate you imparting your knowledge. For our viewers who wanted to learn more about you online, is there a place we can send them?
Well, I guess you could go to my dispensary website's www.dank-colorado.com. That's kind of where it started. Okay. You can Google my name, Greg Gamet. That's GREGGAMET. You'll see the good and the bad. Most of it's good. Can't make everybody happy. And there's Denver Consulting Group is now owned by Medicine Man Technologies. They bought that out, and they're a public company. So I always try to push people. I believe that's a good investment. MDCL, I think that Kush Bottles is still a good investment. KSHB online. But really, and then goldflora.com, www.goldflora.com. And there's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of information on there where you gain some knowledge.
Excellent. Great discussion, Greg. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
That's it, everyone. See you next time.